What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I just wanted to do an all-inclusive recap on the lightweight division action that we've seen taking place over the past few weeks. We've had many of the top lightweights taking to the ring with varying degrees of success, or in the case of Teofimo Lopez, no success at all. But I wanted to start with the most recent activity, which is Vasily Lomachenko taking on Richard Commey in a fight that, most thought that Lomachenko was going to win. We really didn't know what type of dynamic was going to take place between the two. We know that Richard Commey had a drill of a right hand through combinations and was very strong bodily-wise. Now, Lomachenko was coming off of a win over Nakatani, who famously gave Teofimo Lopez a good run for his money. And Lomachenko totally devastated Nakatani over the course of several rounds before stopping him, where I thought that Lomachenko versus Nakatani was one of the performances that's kind of been underlooked a bit in terms of when you consider what the best performances of the year are. Now, we've obviously had some great ones throughout 2021, so I get it if you didn't have that at your top. But I think that it should at least be considered as maybe a top 5 type performance in 2021 because of how he dismantled and deconstructed Nakatani, where Nakatani was taking these super clean punches, just totally unguarded. And, Richard Commey found himself in super dire straits as well because of the level of footwork that Lomachenko employs and the way he was taking angles and feinting his way into angles to where, Richard Commey might have had a left and a right hand. And to his credit, he didn't stop throwing punches even after getting badly hurt, getting dropped, and just losing round after round after round. He had enough heart to go the distance here, but he was completely outclassed to where even when he was, he was throwing hard punches to the body, he was really giving it a go, but Lomachenko's level of sophistication in there was just on another level. And I'm surprised that Commey went the distance, especially after that really bad knockdown that he suffered where, around the same time, he was having visible difficulty controlling his leg. His leg was actually dragging for like a few steps where I thought that it was going to be only moments until he got stopped. Well, he went the distance, but Lomachenko looked phenomenal. And I feel like after his loss to Teofimo Lopez, and even after his subsequent win over Nakatani, that people have a tendency to rush the other prospects to the front of the line, basically saying this is the new elite of the class. You've got, at the time, Teofimo Lopez before he was beaten by Kambosos, and, Devin Haney, Gervonta Davis. They're quick to want to bring on what's next, where it's no, not so fast. Which one of these guys do we know can actually beat Lomachenko? Well, we saw Teofimo Lopez do it, but with these two recent performances from Lomachenko, I think that the public consensus or narrative has changed dramatically to where he is, if not at the front of the line, he is very near the top of the class at lightweight. Spectacular performance against the very dangerous Richard Commey, who was coming off a very impressive win against Jackson Mariñez, who many thought should have been awarded a decision win over Rolando Raleigh Romero. Now, let's back it up to the beginning of this, recent activity from the lightweights, where we had Teofimo Lopez defending his belts. Whether you want to say undisputed, he had, 4 major belts plus the ring belt. He had, pretty much all the belts aside from the one that Devin Haney's holding, that WBC belt that Devin Haney currently has. WBC basically created a big mess by introducing the franchise championship and then making that transferable when Teofimo Lopez defied the odds, took a huge gamble, and beat Vasily Lomachenko. He then took a franchise title, which shouldn't have even been up for grabs at the time. It was supposed to be more of a distinction for Lomachenko, where they then issued another belt that Devin Haney had fought for in a vacant title bout against Sayur Abdullayev. That's actually how Devin Haney won that WBC belt. But Teofimo Lopez took on George Kambosos. Many thought that this was just going to be a typical mandatory challenger who, Teofimo Lopez was likely going to steamroll, if not just beat soundly on his way to bigger and better fights. Well, George Kambosos pretty much shocked the boxing world, dropping Teofimo Lopez in the first round after Teofimo Lopez came out like a bat out of hell, like he was really trying to stop Kambosos in the first round. Totally over pursued. He was just coming in, really just letting his hands go, one power punch after another. It basically was the antithesis of how I had gauged Teofimo Lopez's style, where he was a deadly sharpshooting knockout counter puncher and not somebody who's just gonna go after you just with one punch after another. He totally broke character, in my opinion, against George Kambosos. I thought that he totally overlooked him, underestimated him. It seems like the preparation wasn't there. The instruction from the corner, in my view, wasn't there. And this ended up being a dramatic win for George Kambosos, taking all of Teofimo Lopez's belts and thereby becoming the new man in the division, who is now the target of all of these other top contenders, or in the case of Devin Haney, a champion, except for Javonte Davis. He doesn't seem too concerned about fighting any of the elite 135-pounders, where they really need to stop being so disrespectful, in my view, to the fans, PBC and Mayweather Promotions, in the way that they are particularly handling Gervonta Davis's career specifically. I get that he's had, multiple pay-per-views at this point. We don't know what the numbers on this last pay-per-view was just yet. They haven't issued the numbers, but he's a pay-per-view fighter. He makes more money per fight than all of these other guys, so I understand that. But let's not totally disregard the competitive nature of the game, of the sport. The reason why us fans watch in the first place. But Kambosos is now the target in the lightweight division, largely. Still undefeated, now sitting at 20-0 after that excellent performance and win against Teofimo Lopez, which also might be performance of the year. We'll see how everything shakes out. But yeah, George Kambosos is the new name that you need to know. Before this fight, his best win was against Lee Selby, a former 126-pound champion. So between that Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos fight, which we'll also get to what happens to Teofimo Lopez in the wake of all of this, I have doubts that he's going to fight at lightweight again. All indications point to him moving to 140, but we'll see how his mental game and everything comes together in the wake of such a devastating loss. But between Kambosos versus Lopez, or should I say Lopez versus Kambosos, and the most recent Vasily Lomachenko versus Richard Comey, we had a weekend where there were two big fights. One was Devin Haney versus Joseph Jojo Diaz, and the other was Gervonta Tank Davis versus Esau Cruz, the pit bull. And Haney versus Diaz was a very interesting fight because, Devin Haney is kind of credited with being like the sweet science guy. I mean, obviously Lomachenko's got all the skills in the world, but Devin Haney is, kind of in the mold of Floyd Mayweather in a way. I used to think they even looked alike. If you look at like their eye area, like they look like they could be related. But, Devin Haney was even earlier trained by Floyd Mayweather Sr. when he was just like 16, 17 years old, coming up, fighting fights in Tijuana, Mexico against grown men before he was even 18 years old. But Devin Haney is kind of, respected as being somebody who's got very sound technical ability. Not a knockout puncher, although his knockout over Antonio Moran was something to truly behold. You need to check that one out if you haven't. Like, he's got some pop in his gloves, but I agree that he's a great technician. He's got really good skills. But if you watch him versus Jojo Diaz, and you see how easily Jojo Diaz was able to enter the pocket with his, left hand. Jojo Diaz is a southpaw. Devin Haney, in my view, doesn't control the range as well as his reputation would indicate. I saw Jojo Diaz able to collapse the pocket and get his left hand off, connect flush, or at least pretty flush, with Devin Haney several times. Now, Jojo Diaz had all the praise in the world after fighting Devin Haney for Devin Haney. Like, Jojo Diaz is like, no, he hits hard. He's got great skills. I don't know if that's just like the gamesmanship and the sportsmanship of him basically crediting the guy who just beat him. But, I had, my prediction on this fight was that Devin Haney would win by scorecards of like 8 rounds to 4 or 9 rounds to 3. I didn't think it was going to be 7-5 close. And, the judges indeed had it 8-4 and 9-3 on the official scorecards. So he won a convincing and clear decision over Jojo Diaz, but there were just several points in that fight where I thought that they were fighting in much too close of quarters, and that Jojo Diaz was able to kind of put Devin Haney not in danger to where Devin Haney's wobbled or anything, but again, was kind of splashing with a lot of those straight left hands. And, you know, Jojo Diaz is a really good fighter. You know, at this point, his one loss was 2 divisions down against Gary Russell Jr., whose only loss to this day is still against Vasily Lomachenko several years ago. So I don't want to discredit how good Jojo Diaz is. It's just that if you are what they say you are in the sweet science aspect of the game, you would expect more of a commanding display of range control than I was seeing from Devin Haney. And another thing about Haney is, you know, some fighters, they look like they kind of push their punches. Other fighters are able to kind of whip their punches, where, you know, young Floyd Mayweather, even older Floyd Mayweather, Zab Judah, Gary Russell Jr. You've got certain fighters, Thomas the Hitman Hearns, as tall as he was, yes. Roy Jones Jr., where their punches are almost like a rubber band effect, like there's a recoil thing. Or if you watch Floyd, when somebody would try to, you know, they might throw the punch, might not. But if they move their shoulders in a way where Floyd thinks that they're gonna throw the punch and he's preparing for the pull counter, you see his reflexes. He's got this cobra-like, just this like movement where it's like cat quick, and you're like, whoa, like, you know, it's just a twitch that I actually don't think Devin Haney possesses. Not to say that he's slow. He's got pretty good hand speed. I would say it's like B+ hand speed, not quite A- or A hand speed. It's like you see the punch and it's not blinding quick like Floyd Mayweather and like those other guys that I mentioned. And also, you know, he throws a nice jab and he is able to control range fairly well. I mean, you saw him fight against Yorki's Gamboa. Like, he's able to do so in a way where, I mean, he's undefeated and he's now beaten some good fighters, including Jorge Linares and now Jojo Diaz. But his timing isn't as tricky as, say, Vasily Lomachenko, where Lomachenko, again, will kind of feint you into getting the reaction that Loma wants, so then he can reposition his feet very quickly and then let 2 or 3 punches go where you're getting hit super cleanly, no obstruction to the punches, no rolling with the punches. Lomachenko is just landing flush. Devin Haney doesn't have that same magicianship, that same trickery in when and how he sets up and deploys his punches, to where it's almost, I don't want to say it's like a predictable pattern of left hand, right hand, and when he's letting his hooks go and so forth. But he doesn't have, in my opinion, the same level of deception in his game that allows him to land that flush against his opponents. He does land some flush shots, but it's not the same repeated helplessness that you see his opponents in, where they don't know where the punch is coming from in some cases. So I'm going to keep an eye on that with Devin Haney. But with the hand speed and kind of giving him a B+ versus an AA-, I actually think that Gervonta Davis, who just fought against Esau Cruz, the Pitbull, I think that Gervonta Davis actually has not only immense power, but has a hand speed advantage over Devin Haney. Ryan Garcia might as well. The jury's still out on it, but I see more of just a quick twitch, pull of the trigger from Gervonta Davis in some of his punches than I do in Devin Haney. Now, I was wrong about Gervonta Davis versus Esau Cruz. I thought Gervonta Davis was going to have a relatively, not super easy, but a easier time with Isaac Cruz than he ended up having. I thought that he was going to stop Esau Cruz. Now, the story to that fight was Esau Cruz coming in a low crouch, and that was one of my misjudgments here. Is I thought that Gervonta Davis, for once having a height advantage, Gervonta Davis is usually the shorter fighter in the fight, I thought that his height advantage would in fact be an advantage for Davis. It ended up not being the case. Esau Cruz is like 5'4", very short, and fights at an even shorter crouch. So Gervonta Davis was having to throw punches at angles that he wasn't used to throwing them before, where, you know, it ended up costing him a hand. His signature left hand after he was able to make the adjustments and start kind of boxing or clearly outboxing Esau Cruz as they got into the, fourth, fifth, and sixth rounds, maybe even the third, I believe, where Gervonta Davis took a minute, but he started figuring Isaac Cruz out, started landing flush as Isaac Cruz would be the more aggressive fighter entering into the pocket. Like, you've got certain fighters who, I feel like in every fight, there's a fighter who's more and then less. One guy's more willing, one guy's less willing to get nasty, to possibly clash heads, to possibly, hurt each other bodily wise because of how rugged the fight is getting. For as deadly as Gervonta Davis is as a puncher, I get the feeling that he likes a clean pocket where he's landing punches at crisp angles and from clear distances. Not so much the head-to-head, rugged, in the trenches warfare. I mean, Gervonta Davis will go there, but I got the impression with Davis versus Cruz that Cruz wanted to muddy the waters way more than Gervonta Davis wanted to. And even with that rugged entry that Cruz was deploying, Davis, I thought, more or less had him figured out in the middle rounds. But then he apparently breaks or really hurts his hand, where in the last 3 or 4 rounds, I don't think I saw him throw one meaningful left hand. And again, that's his bread and butter. That's his get you out of there punch, either a left uppercut or a straight left. He's done it time and time again. But he was still able to box relatively well in those last couple rounds without even using his left hand. Phenomenal stuff. So for as much as I thought Isaac Cruz or Esau Cruz overachieved against Davis, and I thought Davis was going to get the knockout, he ended up getting a close decision win. I had him winning at 115 to 113. Some thought that it was a robbery. I didn't see it. I saw a close decision win for Gervonta Davis, but not a win for Esau Cruz, and not a draw. But it was, and it ended up being a very competitive and pretty dramatic fight because I don't think it was going to be that close if Gervonta Davis didn't hurt his hand. And I don't know how you could discount how much that matters when your money punch is no longer an option for you because of an injury. So I don't downgrade my assessment of Gervonta Davis. If anything, I'm looking at Devin Haney a little bit differently after that fight against the very good, again, Joseph Jojo Diaz, than I am recalibrating my assessment of Gervonta Davis. I look at that as being injury caused, basically punching like the hard top of Esau Cruz's head, hurting your hand. And, Gervonta Davis just isn't going to be in a lot of situations where he has the height advantage. He's going to be fighting taller fighters in most cases. So, again, I don't downgrade where I have Gervonta Davis positioned ability-wise and performance-wise. It just ended up being a lot tougher of a fight than most of us anticipated against Esau Cruz. But, in this few weeks of great lightweight action, the only guy who was supposed to come out on top who didn't was Teofimo Lopez. The new king of the division is George Kambosos Jr., even though I see Lomachenko as maybe being the best in the division right now. So now the question is, who's going to get that title shot against George Kambosos Jr., who's, managed by Lou DiBella. So he's not as beholden to a particular network as most of the other guys we're talking about here. So, I feel like it's most equitable and most fair if Devin Haney gets a shot. And it's because he's holding a share of the title, and I feel like it's on the WBC to pretty much mandate that fight so they could clean up that mess, and so we're only dealing with one WBC belt. It's bad enough that every division has at least four major belts. You got the unofficial ring belt as well, which is more credible than most of the actual belts, in my opinion, but it's not an official major belt. But I do place a lot of stock in that ring belt. But I think that the WBC should issue Kambosos versus Devin Haney. Devin Haney, with these last couple wins against Linares and now against Joseph Jojo Diaz, I think that he's earned a shot at a greater title fight Not to mention he's holding the WBC belt. I think that that's the right thing to do. I hope he doesn't get sidestepped here. I feel like in a perfect world, the next fight to make would be Lomachenko versus Gervonta Davis. I mean, can you imagine just the style clash between Lomachenko and Javonte Davis would be amazing. I would love to see that fight. I don't think that we're going to get that because of the promotional BS that we're having to deal with. So, you know, we might end up getting, unfortunately in my book, not because I don't like the fight, just because I think it would be unfair to Devin Haney, who's already one of the most avoided fighters in the division, if not the most avoided fighter in the division, where you had Ryan Garcia basically refuse and say no thank you to a title shot. When he became the mandatory after beating Luke Campbell, Ryan Garcia had no interest in fighting Devin Haney and instead try to, pursue other opportunities. Maybe a huge fight with Manny Pacquiao, that pie in the sky fight which didn't materialize. And he's been calling out Gervonta Davis. So, depending on how things shake out, I wouldn't be mad at a Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia fight, even though, they are with different promoters right now. I wouldn't be mad at Gervonta Davis versus Vasily Lomachenko. I just really want to see Kambosos and Devin Haney clean up that WBC title and somebody walk away. Between them two, walk away as undisputed champ of the lightweight division. And then you could have the next guy up fight the winner of that, whether it's Lomachenko or Gervonta Davis. I feel like Ryan Garcia maybe, at best, I think he should be fighting Gervonta Davis. I do not think that he should get a damn title shot unless he's like Devin Haney's mandatory and Devin Haney wants to fight him. With this last layoff, with refusing, the Devin Haney title shot, and then, pulling out of the Javier Fortuna fight due to the, citing mental health issues, and then pulling out of the Joseph Jojo Diaz fight, citing injury. I don't think that it would be fair for Ryan Garcia to get any title fight or to be able to, pick his shot at this juncture. I think that he needs to beat a Nakatani, a Linares, a, Esau Cruz. Let's do that one. Ryan Garcia versus Esau Cruz. I'm all for that. But yeah, I don't think he gets to jump the line. Lomachenko, I could see jumping the line, and I wouldn't have as big a problem with Lomachenko jumping the line versus if Ryan Garcia jumped the line. But yeah, let me know what you think about the current state of the lightweight division. In a future video, I want to get into, just kind of matchmaking and who I actually think would win given some of these matchups. You could ask me in the comments and I'll tell you who I kind of favor as it stands with any of these hypothetical matchups. But let me know how you think and how you want to see the lightweight division shake out after these last few meaningful, very meaningful fights at lightweight. Please let me know in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.